On a desolate planet, the air was thick with dust, swirling in the remnants of a once thriving ecosystem. Canyons and craggy cliffs carved the landscape, casting long shadows under the distant sun that barely pierced through the haze. Kaldor, the ruthless warlord of the galaxy, stood atop a rocky outcrop, surveying his vast dominion through an intricate holographic map that flickered with the lights of his numerous conquests. The map displayed glowing territories, each marked with the symbols of his unyielding power, a testament to his reign of terror and strategic prowess. Around him, his advisors clustered nervously, their faces pale and taut as they awaited his judgment. The warlord's reputation preceded him, a chilling aura of fear that made even the bravest of souls tremble. Kaldor's dark eyes narrowed as he scrutinized the details on the holographic display. His fingers traced the outlines of planets he had subjugated, their resources now pillaged to fuel his ever-growing ambitions. He was a master tactician, but his cruelty defined him, and the galaxy had learned to fear the consequences of defiance. Suddenly, a spark of curiosity ignited within Kaldor as his gaze fell upon a small, unmarked planet, Earth. Rumors of a fragile Earthling named Lyra, a scientist with the extraordinary ability to influence minds, reached his ears like whispers in the wind. Intrigued, Kaldor leaned closer to the hologram, the pulse of the map illuminating his face in an eerie glow. The thought of harnessing such power was intoxicating. An ability to manipulate thought could elevate him beyond the mere title of warlord. It could make him a god among men. The very idea sent a thrill through him, stirring a hunger that had long been dormant. As he listened to his advisors drone on about their latest military strategies and conquests, Kaldor's mind drifted to Lyra. She was said to be unassuming, a mere scientist lost in her experiments. But the potential she held was an opportunity Kaldor could not afford to overlook. He envisioned her, frail yet potent, standing before him, her mind bending to his will. With her abilities at his disposal, he could solidify his dominion over the galaxy and crush any remaining resistance beneath his heel. The advisors, unaware of the warlord's fixation, continued to present their reports. Their words blended into a monotonous hum, the gravity of their discussions lost on Kaldor as he became increasingly absorbed in his thoughts of Lyra. He could almost see her, her delicate frame silhouetted against the backdrop of her laboratory, her brow furrowed in concentration. The very image stirred something within him, an uncharacteristic fascination. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Lyra toiled away in her laboratory, a stark contrast to the chaos that enveloped Kaldor's empire. The walls were lined with shelves of vials and equipment, a chaotic symphony of scientific endeavors. She was focused, completely absorbed in her work, unaware of the dark forces converging upon her. Her hair, dark and unruly, framed her face as she bent over a series of complex equations scrawled across a digital tablet. The faint hum of machinery filled the air, punctuated by the occasional beep of instruments as they processed data. Lyra had dedicated her life to her research, driven by a thirst for knowledge and the hope of discovering something that could change the world. Her latest experiment involved manipulating energy fields, a concept that had been dismissed by many in her field as mere theoretical nonsense. Yet, her relentless pursuit of the truth led her to an extraordinary breakthrough. It happened in a moment of serendipity, a surge of energy coursing through her apparatus, illuminating the lab with a brilliant glow. As she examined the results, her heart raced with excitement. The implications of her discovery were monumental, capable of revolutionizing technology and perhaps even the very fabric of society. But as she reveled in her triumph, a shadow loomed over her unassuming existence. Unbeknownst to her, Kaldor's forces were already on their way, zeroing in on her location with relentless precision. Back on the desolate planet, Kaldor's mind was now made up. He ordered his elite soldiers to prepare for a mission that would take them to Earth. The soldiers, clad in imposing armor and armed with advanced weaponry, stood at the ready, their eyes glinting with anticipation. They were the best of the best, trained to carry out Kaldor's every command without hesitation. Underestimating Lyra was not an option. He understood the value of caution as well as the thrill of conquest. As the soldiers departed, Kaldor remained on the rocky outcrop, staring into the swirling dust of his planet. He felt a surge of ambition coursing through him as he envisioned the moment of capturing Lyra. It would not just be a victory, it would be a statement. He would make her a symbol of his power, a testament to his ability to bend even the most fragile beings to his will. Meanwhile, Lyra continued her work. Blissfully unaware of the impending storm, the laboratory hummed with life, her instruments a testament to her dedication and brilliance. She was on the verge of a breakthrough that could change the course of history, yet the tension in the air felt palpable, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. Suddenly, the tranquility of her sanctuary shattered as the door burst open, and Kaldor's elite soldiers stormed in. Their presence was overwhelming, a whirlwind of aggression and intent. Lyra's heart raced as she glanced up, her instincts screaming at her to flee. The room was suddenly filled with the harsh clang of boots against metal and the sound of her equipment being upturned in the chaos. In an instant, her mind raced, calculating her options. She had to escape. With a quick glance towards the back of the lab, she spotted an emergency exit. Summoning her courage, she darted towards it, her pulse pounding in her ears as she evaded the soldiers who were now searching for her with ruthless efficiency. Outside, the desolate landscape stretched before her, vast and unwelcoming. She ran, her feet pounding against the hard ground, the weight of her discovery fueling her desperation. Behind her, the soldiers yelled commands, their voices a haunting reminder of the danger that pursued her. Lyra felt the thrill of adrenaline surge through her veins as she navigated the rocky terrain, her mind racing with thoughts of survival. Though she was fragile in appearance, her spirit burned brightly, driving her to outmaneuver her pursuers. She ducked behind rocks and weaved through narrow crevices, utilizing every ounce of her wit and intelligence to evade capture. The fear of being caught by Kaldor's soldiers pushed her to her limits as she fought against the dire circumstances that threatened to envelop her. As she continued her escape, Kaldor stood at the helm of his forces, his eyes glimmering with anticipation. He would not rest until Lyra was in his grasp. The chase had begun, a relentless pursuit fueled by the Warlord's insatiable hunger for power and the scientists' unyielding determination to survive. The galaxy would soon witness the collision of their fates, a clash of ambition and vulnerability that would alter the course of their lives forever. In the dimly lit enclave, Lyra felt a mixture of relief and trepidation wash over her as she entered the makeshift rebel base. The air was thick with the scent of burning fuel and the faint hum of machinery, a cacophony of sounds that reminded her of her laboratory back on Earth. But here, amidst the tattered banners and flickering lights, the atmosphere was both charged with purpose and laced with desperation. She had escaped Kaldor's clutches, but the looming threat of his relentless pursuit hung heavily in the air. As she stepped further inside, her eyes adjusted to the low light, revealing a gathering of weary faces. The rebels were a diverse group. Some were former soldiers disillusioned by Kaldor's tyranny. Others were civilians whose lives had been shattered by the Warlord's conquests. Each pair of eyes reflected a mixture of hope and fear, and Lyra felt the weight of their expectations settle upon her shoulders like a heavy cloak. They were looking to her for guidance, and she was acutely aware of the gravity of her situation. Lyra had come to this hidden enclave not just as a fugitive, but as a beacon of hope. She had spent the last few days evading capture, relying on her wits and her knowledge of energy manipulation, an ability she had honed in her scientific pursuits. Now, she was determined to share this knowledge with her newfound allies. She believed that with her skills, they might stand a chance against Kaldor's formidable forces. Gathering the rebels around her, Lyra began to explain the principles behind her discovery of energy manipulation. She spoke of the way energy could be harnessed and redirected, how it could be used not just as a weapon, but as a shield, a means of protection against the onslaught of Kaldor's armies. With each word she spoke, she could see their faces light up with understanding, their hope rekindled by the prospect of standing against their oppressor. As she demonstrated how to create small energy shields using their own life force, the room filled with a palpable sense of excitement. The rebels, once mere victims of Kaldor's tyranny, began to envision themselves as warriors, capable of fighting back. Lyra felt a surge of determination as she watched them practice, their movements clumsy at first but gradually becoming more fluid as they gained confidence. The energy shields flickered to life, casting a soft glow around the room, illuminating their eager faces. Yet lurking beneath her optimism was a gnawing anxiety. Lyra understood the risks involved in this rebellion. Kaldor was not merely a warlord, he was a ruthless strategist who had crushed countless uprisings with merciless efficiency. The thought of leading these brave souls into battle against such an adversary filled her with dread. She had to remind herself that they were no longer powerless. They had the potential to change their fate. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Kaldor seethed with frustration. The more he learned about Lyra, the more he became consumed by an obsession that clouded his judgment. His advisors advised caution, but Kaldor was deaf to their warnings. He envisioned Lyra's abilities as the key to his ultimate dominion over the galaxy, a tool that would render him invincible. To him, capturing her was no longer just a strategic move, it had become a personal vendetta. In the dark confines of his war room, Kaldor paced restlessly, his mind racing with thoughts of conquest. He ordered his bounty hunters to scour the galaxy, offering exorbitant rewards for anyone who could deliver Lyra to him. The promise of riches and power drew many into the hunt, turning the galaxy into a dangerous playground of mercenaries eager to claim the warlord's favor. Kaldor's reputation as a fearsome ruler only intensified the fervor of the hunt. The notion that his most prized possession could be snatched from his grasp fueled his rage. As the days passed, Lyra and the rebels continued their training. The Enclave buzzed with activity as they honed their newfound abilities. Lyra felt a sense of camaraderie growing among them, a bond forged through shared struggles and collective hope. Each successful practice session bolstered their confidence, and she could see the fire of rebellion igniting within their hearts. They were no longer merely survivors. They were warriors ready to fight for their freedom. Yet, the shadow of Kaldor loomed large over their efforts. The rebels knew that time was not on their side. With each passing moment, Kaldor's forces were inching closer, and Lyra felt the urgency of their situation pressing down on her. The knowledge she had so eagerly shared now felt like a double-edged sword. It could empower them, but it could also lead them to their doom if they did not proceed with caution. Tensions escalated as the day of reckoning approached. Lyra gathered the rebels for a final briefing, her heart pounding as she addressed the group. She could see the determination in their eyes, but she also sensed their fear. They were about to step into the unknown, and the stakes were higher than they had ever imagined. Lyra reminded them of the importance of unity, of standing together against the overwhelming might of Kaldor's forces. As they prepared for the inevitable confrontation, Lyra felt the heavy burden of responsibility weighing on her. She understood that her powers could be the key to their survival, but she also recognized the grave implications of wielding such power. The thought that her abilities could either save or doom them haunted her. What if she failed? What if her manipulation of energy, intended to protect, instead led to chaos and destruction? The atmosphere in the Enclave grew increasingly charged with anticipation. The rebels gathered their weapons and resources, each preparing in their own way for the battle ahead. Lyra watched as they donned makeshift armor, their resolve solidifying with every passing moment. In that fleeting moment, she caught a glimpse of the courage that inspired her, a determination to fight against the tyranny that had plagued their lives for too long. As the sun set on the horizon, casting long shadows across the Enclave, Lyra steeled herself for what lay ahead. She would not allow fear to dictate her actions. The time for hiding was over. It was time to confront Kaldor and his merciless forces. With the rebels by her side, she would stand firm, not just for their freedom, but for the belief that compassion could triumph over tyranny. A flicker of hope ignited within her, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, the strength of unity could pave the way for a brighter future. The battlefield was a cacophony of chaos, a swirling vortex of shouts, gunfire, and the crackling of energy shields. Smoke billowed in thick clouds, obscuring the sun and casting a pall over the land. Lyra stood at the forefront of the conflict, her heart pounding as she focused her energy. The rebels fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered, and Kaldor's forces pressed forward with relentless ferocity. It was a moment of reckoning, and Lyra knew she had to step up. With a deep breath, she extended her hands, feeling the familiar hum of energy coursing through her veins. She visualized the protective barriers she had practiced in secret, the shimmering shields that had become her lifeline. As she concentrated, a translucent barrier erupted around her, pulsating with vibrant colors. The energy radiated outward, creating a dome that enveloped her comrades and deflected incoming projectiles. The rebels' morale surged, emboldened by Lyra's display of power. As Lyra established her shields, she could see the chaos unfolding around her. The rebels, though outmatched, rallied behind her, pushing back against Kaldor's soldiers with newfound determination. The energy shields flickered and glimmered, absorbing the impacts of blasts and providing a crucial lifeline to the beleaguered fighters. Lyra could feel their hope intertwining with her own, and for a moment she was not just an Earthling scientist, she was the heart of their resistance. However, Kaldor's troops were relentless. They regrouped, aiming their weapons with precision, and as the rebels advanced, the Warlord's men counterattacked with brutal efficiency. Lyra's shields began to strain under the onslaught, the energy flickering dangerously as she struggled to maintain her focus amidst the chaos. Each blast that struck the barrier reverberated through her, a reminder of the stakes at hand. She could not waver. Too much depended on her. Then, as if summoned by the turmoil, Kaldor himself descended onto the battlefield. His presence was overwhelming, a dark shadow among the fighting. He surveyed the scene with cold detachment, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto Lyra. She felt a chill run down her spine, an instinctual recognition of the power that he wielded. He was a force of nature, ruthless, imposing, and utterly unyielding. As he strode towards her, the ground seemed to tremble beneath his feet. The energy in the air shifted, charged with tension as the two powers prepared to clash. Lyra could feel the weight of his gaze, the intensity of his presence igniting a primal fear within her. But she could not retreat. She would not allow herself to be intimidated. Summoning every ounce of courage, she stood her ground, meeting his fierce glare with one of her own. Kaldor's approach was deliberate, his movements calculated as he advanced through the fray. The soldiers around him parted like the sea, their faces etched with awe and terror. To them, he was a god of war, a harbinger of doom. But to Lyra, he was a man driven by ambition, perhaps, but a man nonetheless. As they neared one another, she could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, a fleeting moment where the Warlord's facade cracked, revealing a glimmer of something deeper. The clash between them was electric. Lyra unleashed her powers, weaving intricate patterns of energy to counter Kaldor's brute strength. She formed barriers and projectiles, a dazzling display of light and force. Each strike met with Kaldor's raw power. He retaliated with ferocity, each blow reverberating through the air and rattling her core. The ground shook beneath them as they exchanged blows, the landscape around them transforming into a battleground of might and will. As the battle raged, Lyra's focus sharpened. She could feel the ebb and flow of energy around her, every pulse resonating with the heartbeat of the conflict. Her shields expanded and contracted, absorbing the impact of Kaldor's strikes. But she knew she could not hold out forever. With each clash, she sensed Kaldor's strength, a force that could crush her with a single blow. But something unexpected stirred within her, an understanding that transcended their differences. In a moment of vulnerability, Kaldor hesitated. It was as if time itself slowed, and Lyra seized the opportunity to observe him closely. The Warlord, in all his might, seemed momentarily lost, caught in the tumult of emotions that rippled just beneath the surface. There was a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a glimmer of something that resembled humanity. Perhaps he was not merely a tyrant, but a product of his own making, a man shaped by the choices he had made and the pain he had endured. This brief pause in their confrontation became pivotal. The rebels, sensing the shift in energy, rallied behind Lyra. They regrouped, their determination renewed as they saw their leader stand defiantly against the Warlord. The momentum began to shift, the chaos of battle transformed into a symphony of hope and resilience. Lyra felt the energy of her comrades surge around her, their belief intertwining with her own, creating a powerful tapestry of unity. Kaldor's moment of hesitation was fleeting, but it was enough. The rebels, emboldened by Lyra's bravery and the unexpected vulnerability of their enemy, launched a counterattack. They surged forward, propelled by adrenaline and the fierce desire to reclaim their freedom. Each rebel fought with renewed vigor, their hearts alight with the fire of rebellion. Lyra, sensing the tide turning, poured her energy into the shields, amplifying their strength. The barriers shimmered with brilliance, absorbing the impacts of Kaldor's forces and allowing the rebels to press on. The realization struck her that their struggle was not just against Kaldor, but against the very notion of tyranny itself. They were fighting for a future, for a chance to reclaim their lives from the clutches of fear. As the battle intensified, Kaldor found himself surrounded by the resilience of those he had sought to crush. The energy in the air crackled with an electric fervor, a palpable force that seemed to bind them all together in that moment. He felt the weight of the rebellion pressing against him, a collective will that was slowly eroding the walls of his own fortress of solitude. The Warlord had never anticipated such fierce defiance, and for the first time, he found himself questioning not just Lyra's resolve, but his own. Lyra's heart raced as she stood at the nexus of this conflict. She felt the eyes of the rebels on her, their hopes resting on her shoulders. Kaldor was no longer just an enemy. He was a reflection of everything they had fought against, a complex figure whose path had been forged through pain and loss. The realization struck her like a lightning bolt. Perhaps the true battle lay not in defeating him, but in reaching him. And yet, as the clash continued, the stakes were perilously high. The battlefield was a tempest of emotions, and with each passing moment, Lyra understood that both she and Kaldor were teetering on the edge of a precipice. The outcome of this confrontation would not only shape their destinies, but could potentially alter the course of the galaxy itself. As she stood firm, energy crackling around her, Lyra prepared to face whatever lay ahead, armed with the knowledge that even the fiercest warlords could be touched by the fragility of compassion. The battlefield raged like a tempest, a cacophony of clashing metal and shouts of defiance filling the air. Lyra found herself at the center of the chaos, her heart pounding not just with fear, but with an unexpected surge of determination. As she watched her comrades fight valiantly against Kaldor's relentless forces, she felt a profound shift within her. The realization dawned that Kaldor, the warlord she had come to see as a monster, was not merely a faceless villain. He was a man shaped by his past, and perhaps, beneath the armor of ruthlessness, there lay a remnant of humanity. With each blast of energy that she deflected, Lyra glimpsed the man behind the warlord. Kaldor's eyes, cold and calculating, were now pierced by moments of doubt and conflict. She observed the way he commanded his troops, his voice booming with authority. Yet there was a flicker of hesitation whenever he caught sight of her using her powers. It was as if he were watching a reflection of himself, a reminder of the courage he had long buried under layers of ambition and bloodshed. As the battle intensified, Lyra made a choice. She would not allow fear to dictate her actions. Instead, she would reach out to Kaldor. Perhaps, just perhaps, she could awaken the humanity that lay dormant within him. It was a risk, a gamble that could either save them all or lead to their utter destruction. But Lyra was willing to take it. She stepped forward, her energy pulsing around her, creating a protective barrier that shimmered like a fragile dream against the chaos. Kaldor's attention snapped to her, his expression a mixture of rage and intrigue. In that moment, she saw the warlord's facade crack, revealing the turmoil underneath. He was a man fighting against the shadows of his past, a past filled with loss, betrayal, and the weight of his own decisions. Lyra took a deep breath, focusing on the energy within her, the energy that connected all living beings. She projected her thoughts, her emotions, hoping to bridge the chasm between them. In the heat of battle, Kaldor found himself grappling with an unfamiliar sensation. Lyra's boldness stirred something deep within him, a flicker of doubt about the path he had chosen. He had built an empire through fear, crushing any who opposed him, yet here stood Lyra, unguarded and resolute, She was a beacon of hope amidst the darkness, and for the first time in years, Kaldor questioned the legacy he was creating. Was he to be remembered as a tyrant, feared and hated, or could he change? The thought lingered in his mind like a whisper, persistent and unsettling. Lyra's heart raced as she sensed a shift in Kaldor. She could feel the tension in the air, the weight of his indecision pressing down on them both. It was as if the universe had momentarily paused, allowing a sliver of vulnerability to seep into the fabric of their confrontation. She continued to extend her energy toward him, not as a weapon, but as a lifeline. She hoped to convey the power of compassion, a force that could reshape their destinies. Yet just as the tide seemed to turn, the battlefield erupted once more. Kaldor's troops charged forward with renewed ferocity, driven by the Warlord's iron will. The sounds of combat pierced through the fragile moment they shared. Lyra's mind raced as she realized that time was running out. She needed to act quickly, to protect her comrades while still reaching out to Kaldor. She gathered her energy, focusing it into a powerful shield. But she also kept a part of her consciousness attuned to the Warlord's emotions. In the midst of the chaos, Kaldor felt a surge of frustration. He was torn between his instinct to crush the rebellion before him and the strange pull he felt toward Lyra. The very idea of compassion had become a foreign concept, one he had long since discarded in favor of power and control. Yet, as he watched Lyra harness her abilities to safeguard her friends, he felt something stir within him, a longing for connection, for understanding. As the rebels pushed forward, Lyra's resolve solidified. She would not let Kaldor's darkness extinguish the light they had ignited. She turned her attention back to her comrades, focusing on creating a protective dome around them. The energy flowed from her, weaving a barrier that shimmered against the onslaught. The rebels fought fiercely, emboldened by her presence, but the reality of their situation weighed heavily on her shoulders. Kaldor's forces were numerous, and their determination was unwavering. Kaldor watched as Lyra shielded her comrades, her determination igniting a spark of something he hadn't felt in years: admiration. He felt the heat of battle, the adrenaline coursing through him, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of conflict within. He had always believed that strength lay in dominance, in instilling fear and obedience. Yet here was Lyra, embodying a different kind of strength, one rooted in vulnerability and compassion. It was a lesson he never asked for, but one that resonated deep within him. Suddenly, the tide of battle shifted again. Kaldor saw an opportunity to assert his dominance, to crush this rebellion once and for all. His mind, clouded by ambition, compelled him to unleash a devastating weapon from his arsenal, one that he had kept hidden, a secret he had long guarded. It was a weapon capable of annihilating everything in its path, a testament to his power. As he prepared to give the order, a deep internal conflict washed over him. In that moment of clarity, he hesitated. The weight of his past decisions loomed over him like a dark cloud. He saw Lyra, her face set with determination, her energy pulsating with a fierce yet compassionate glow. She was fighting for something greater than herself, for a future where fear did not reign supreme. Could he truly bring himself to obliterate that hope? As the weapon's mechanism whirred to life, Kaldor found himself standing at a crossroads, the decision weighing heavily on his heart. Lyra sensed his turmoil, the flicker of doubt that danced in his eyes. She understood that he was wrestling with his demons, caught between the warlord he had become and the man he might still be. The energy between them crackled with intensity, a palpable connection that transcended the chaos surrounding them. In that pivotal moment, Lyra channeled her energy, not just to shield her comrades, but to reach out to Kaldor once more. She poured her essence into the air, hoping to wrap him in the warmth of her resolve. She was not just defending against his weapon, she was offering him a choice. The choice to turn away from destruction and embrace the possibility of redemption. The battlefield continued to roar around them, but within that chaos, a profound silence enveloped Kaldor as he battled against himself. He could feel the weight of his legacy pressing down on him, the countless lives he had extinguished, the fear he had instilled. Yet here was Lyra, unyielding and brave, extending an olive branch. It was a moment that could define not just his fate, but the fate of the galaxy. As the weapon hummed ominously, Kaldor's resolve began to crack. The path of fear and domination lay before him, a path he had walked for so long, but now, standing opposite Lyra, he saw a different future, a future where his legacy could be one of compassion, a legacy he could share with her. The world around them was on the brink of destruction, but within that chaos, Kaldor found the strength to make a choice. He was more than a warlord, more than the sum of his past actions. He had the power to change, to forge a new destiny. But would he have the courage to take that leap, to embrace the light that Lyra represented? The answer hung in the balance, with the future of many resting on the edge of a decision yet to be made. In the heart of the battlefield, as the remnants of conflict lingered in the air, Lyra stood resolute, her heart racing with the remnants of adrenaline. The chaos around her seemed to fade as she focused intently on the task ahead. The ground trembled beneath her feet, a stark reminder of the devastation Kaldor had unleashed moments before. Her mind raced with thoughts of her comrades and the lives at stake. Drawing upon the energy that coursed through her, she positioned herself at the center of the fray, a beacon of hope amid despair. With every ounce of concentration, Lyra extended her senses, feeling the vibrations of the approaching onslaught. She envisioned a colossal barrier, one that would absorb the impending destruction and protect those around her. The air crackled with energy as she wove threads of light and power together, forming a shimmering shield. It glowed with an ethereal brilliance, illuminating the darkness that threatened to engulf them. The explosion erupted, a thunderous roar that echoed across the battlefield, sending shockwaves that rattled the very foundations of their struggle. As the blinding light faded, silence hung in the air, a surreal pause where time itself seemed to hold its breath. Lyra's barrier had held, absorbing the brunt of Kaldor's weapon. The battlefield, once filled with the sounds of combat, now lay in stunned disbelief. Both sides, soldiers of Kaldor and the rebels alike, stared wide-eyed at the miracle that had just unfolded before them. They had all witnessed the impossible. A fragile Earthling had deflected a force that could have annihilated them. Kaldor, standing at the edge of the chaos, felt a shift within him. His heart raced, not just from the battle, but from an awakening that he had long buried beneath layers of cruelty and ambition. He had always ruled through fear, wielding power with an iron fist, believing that strength was synonymous with dominance. But here, before him, was a demonstration of a different kind of strength, a strength rooted in compassion, resilience, and an unyielding spirit. Lyra had not only saved lives, she had challenged the very essence of his rule. The silence was palpable as Kaldor's gaze locked onto Lyra. He saw not just an Earthling but a formidable force, one that had the potential to fracture the foundations of his empire. The realization struck him like a lightning bolt. He had been so consumed by his quest for dominance that he had failed to recognize the true power of unity, the strength that lay in compassion and understanding. As he observed Lyra, he felt a stirring within him, a flicker of something he had thought extinguished, hope. The battlefield slowly began to stir as soldiers on both sides processed the implications of what they had just witnessed. The rebels, buoyed by Lyra's incredible act of defiance, found renewed vigor in their hearts. They rallied together, their spirits ignited by the possibility of victory against a tyrant who had long seemed invincible. Kaldor's soldiers, too, were caught in a web of uncertainty. They had followed their leader without question, driven by fear and loyalty, but now they stood before a display of courage that made them reconsider their own beliefs. Kaldor's internal conflict deepened. He had always envisioned himself as the conqueror, the warlord who would carve his name into the annals of history through blood and iron. But the sight of Lyra, standing tall amidst the ruins of battle, challenged everything he thought he knew. Her strength was not derived from power alone. It was the power of connection, of empathy, and of shared humanity. In that moment, he realized that perhaps he had been wrong all along. As the dust settled, Lyra turned to face Kaldor, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She knew that this moment could define not only their fates but the fate of countless others. The warlord stood before her, his imposing figure now overshadowed by the enormity of his choices. She could see the conflict etched on his face, the way his eyes flickered with uncertainty. The weight of his past clashed with the potential of his future, and she felt an overwhelming urge to reach out to him. In that charged atmosphere, Kaldor found himself at a crossroads. He could continue down the path of destruction, clinging to the power that had brought him to this moment, or he could take a leap into the unknown, forging an alliance with the very people he had sought to subjugate. The decision loomed heavy in the air, a tangible force that seemed to bind them both in a moment of extraordinary possibility. Lyra's heart surged with hope, a fragile but resilient flame that flickered against the overwhelming darkness. She understood that Kaldor was not merely a monster, he was a product of his circumstances. Shaped by a lifetime of conflict and loss, the scars of his past ran deep, but she believed that even the most hardened souls could find redemption. She had seen the humanity within him, and she dared to believe that it could emerge fully. The battlefield, once a theater of violence, now felt like a sacred space, filled with the potential for healing and transformation. It was a moment suspended in time, where the choices made would reverberate across the galaxy. Kaldor's eyes narrowed as he contemplated his next move. The loyalty of his soldiers was no longer assured. They had witnessed the power of compassion, and it had shaken their allegiance to the core. He could feel the tides of change swirling around him, and for the first time, he found himself questioning the very foundation of his rule. As he weighed the options before him, Kaldor felt an unexpected warmth wash over him, a sense of clarity. The empire he had built through fear felt increasingly hollow, a brittle structure that could crumble at any moment. The realization that Lyra represented a different path, one that could lead to a legacy of strength built on unity rather than oppression, began to take root in his mind. The air crackled with tension as both Lyra and Kaldor stood at the precipice of change. Lyra's heart raced as she awaited his response, knowing that the fate of many hung in the balance. Kaldor's gaze slowly softened, the weight of his choices pressing down on him like a heavy cloak. In that moment, he understood that true power lay not in domination, but in the willingness to listen, to empathize, and to forge connections that transcended boundaries. And so, the battlefield, once drenched in blood and ambition, transformed into a space of potential rebirth. Kaldor stood before Lyra, a warlord caught in the throes of transformation, poised to either reinforce the chains of tyranny or break free into a future he had never dared to imagine. The decision loomed large, a moment that would define not only their destinies but the course of the galaxy itself. In that stillness, hope flickered, waiting for the first spark of change to ignite a new beginning. As the dust settled over the battlefield, a thick silence enveloped the area, the echoes of conflict still lingering in the air. Lyra, her heart pounding in her chest, took cautious steps toward Kaldor. The remnants of the fierce clash lay scattered around them, the aftermath of their struggle, a stark reminder of the chaos that had unfolded. She felt an overwhelming urge to reach out to him, to appeal to the humanity she sensed beneath the layers of cruelty and ambition that had defined him for so long. With each step, she could see the warlord's imposing figure, his armor scorched and cracked, a testament to the power of the weapon he had unleashed, now tempered by the resilience she had shown. Kaldor stood motionless, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and conflict. The raw energy of the battle still coursed through his veins, a potent reminder of the destruction he could unleash at will. Yet, as his gaze met Lyra's, he found himself drawn to her unwavering conviction. In that moment, he was more than a warlord. He was a man on the precipice of a monumental choice. Lyra's presence radiated a warmth that clashed with the coldness of his reign, a beacon of compassion in the darkness of his past. He was acutely aware of the weight of her gaze, filled with an expectation that both frightened and intrigued him. Just as he seemed ready to relent, the ground shook violently beneath them, and a new threat emerged from the shadows of the distant mountains. A coalition of warlords, each more ruthless than Kaldor himself, descended upon the battlefield with a relentless fury. They had come to eliminate the two figures who had dared to challenge the status quo, seeking to eradicate what they deemed a burgeoning alliance of weakness. The air crackled with tension as the coalition advanced, their war machines and soldiers a tide of aggression that threatened to inundate everything in their path. Lyra's heart raced, her instincts screaming at her to flee, but she stood her ground, bolstered by the realization that she was no longer alone. Kaldor, despite his reputation, possessed a formidable power that could rival the Coalition's might. With a single glance exchanged between them, a silent understanding passed through the air. They had no choice but to unite against this common enemy. It was a convergence of their strengths, a moment that could define not only their fates, but also the fate of the galaxy. As the Coalition struck, chaos erupted anew. Explosions lit up the sky, and the ground trembled beneath the relentless assault of enemy forces. Kaldor's instincts kicked in, and he moved with a ferocity that belied his earlier hesitation. He summoned his energy, channeling it into a whirlwind of destructive force that he unleashed upon the advancing Coalition. Lyra, in turn, tapped into the newfound depths of her abilities, which had been awakened by her connection to Kaldor. Together, they formed a formidable front. Lyra projected energy shields that absorbed and deflected incoming fire while Kaldor unleashed waves of raw power, each blast a testament to the strength he had built over a lifetime of conquest. The battlefield transformed into a symphony of chaos as they fought side by side. The Coalition, once so confident in their numbers and strength, faltered under the precision and unity of their unexpected adversaries. In the thick of the fray, Lyra felt the power surging through her, a vibrant flow of energy that seemed to resonate with Kaldor's own. It was as if their abilities were intertwined, a dance of destruction and protection that had never before been seen. With each wave of energy they unleashed, Lyra began to understand the true nature of her powers. They were not just a gift, but a response to Kaldor's presence, a manifestation of the bond they had forged in the fires of conflict. As they fought, they began to communicate without words, a shared understanding passing between them. Kaldor's confidence grew as he witnessed Lyra harnessing her abilities, her energy merging with his in a harmonious blend that amplified their strength. The Coalition's forces, once a formidable threat, found themselves on the defensive as Kaldor and Lyra pushed back with relentless determination. With each clash, the realization dawned on them both. They had the potential to change the course of history. Here, in the heart of battle, was the opportunity to forge a new legacy, not one built on fear and domination, but on unity and resilience. The thought invigorated them, fueling their actions as they fought back against their oppressors. The tide of battle began to shift. Kaldor, once fueled by a singular desire for power, now fought for something greater. The fierce warlord found a new purpose, to protect Lyra and the ideals she embodied. As the Coalition's ranks began to crumble under the weight of their combined force, Lyra felt a surge of hope. Together, they were not just two powerful beings. They were a force of change. Amidst the chaos, a sudden realization struck Lyra like a bolt of lightning. Her powers, awakened by Kaldor's energy, were not simply a tool for destruction, but a means of connection. The very essence of her abilities was rooted in the potential for compassion, a force that could heal rather than harm. This revelation ignited a fire within her, urging her to push beyond the confines of her fears. As they fought side by side, the ground beneath them shook with the weight of their actions. The Coalition, realizing the tides had turned, began to retreat, their confidence shattered by the unexpected alliance of the Warlord and the Earthling scientist. Kaldor's laughter, deep and resonant, filled the air as they repelled the last of the attackers. It was a sound that echoed with a newfound vibrancy, a blend of triumph and liberation. In the aftermath, as the dust began to settle once more, Lyra turned to Kaldor, her heart racing with a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension. What would this victory mean for them? For the galaxy? The adrenaline of battle slowly faded, giving way to the reality of their circumstances. They had survived, but what lay ahead was uncertain. Kaldor's expression was unreadable, a mask of contemplation as he surveyed the battlefield, littered with remnants of the Coalition's forces. In that moment, he was not just a warlord, but a man who had faced the fragility of his own existence and the power of compassion that Lyra represented. She had awakened something within him, a desire to evolve beyond the constraints of tyranny. With a determined gaze, Lyra stepped closer to him, the air between them charged with possibility. They stood on the precipice of a new alliance, one that could reshape the galaxy. It was a chance to redefine their legacies, to forge a path that transcended the battle lines drawn by fear and power. They had witnessed the depths of destruction, but now they had the opportunity to cultivate hope. In that moment of shared understanding, Lyra realized that together, they could create a future where compassion was not seen as weakness, but as the cornerstone of strength. Their union was more than a mere alliance. It was a testament to the transformative power of understanding and empathy. In the heart of chaos, they had discovered the potential for something greater, a force that could unify not just themselves but the entire galaxy. And so as they stood amidst the remnants of their fierce battle, a sense of resolve filled the air. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but armed with newfound understanding and unity, Kaldor and Lyra were ready to face whatever lay ahead together. They had become more than just survivors. They were now the architects of their own destiny, bound by a shared vision of a galaxy where compassion reigned supreme.